All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Just getting set here. It's a lot of stuff going on in the world of Apple and smart home tech. We had the new iPads released this week, and I have my 12.9 inch here. I'll be talking about this more in a video. I've been playing a lot with it. I've been a fan of the iPad for a long time. Obviously, as a software developer building apps, I can't use an iPad exclusively because I have to use Xcode. But when the first iPad came out a long time ago, not first iPad. Well, I was a fan of the first iPad as well, and I got that. But like when the first iPad Pro came out, I moved as much of my work as possible to that. And so like all the Slack and email and other stuff for work I do on that. But then, I do obviously like Xcode and other stuff on the Mac. And over the years, I've gone back and forth between using more Mac or more iPad. And I have a lot of thoughts on what makes sort of what use cases I think the modern iPad Pro works well in. It is a really unique piece of hardware. One of the things that I think a lot of people talk about is, that iPad OS needs better multitasking, and Stage Manager has been, I think, much improved in the last year with iPad OS 17. And going from an 11 inch to the 12 or to the 13 inch, you really see the difference in the usefulness of Stage Manager because you have more room to spread out those windows. The 11 inch is way more just I'm going to use one app at a time kind of screen size. I've been really using Stage Manager more now that I'm on the 13 inch iPad. And I've been, I continue to on and off edit random videos for the channel on Final Cut Pro for iPad, or at least partially, and then usually bring it over to the Mac to finish it. And I'm doing that for a video that's coming out this weekend on a robot vacuum. But it's always annoying. I hit like limitations of Final Cut Pro for iPad, the things you can't do that you can do on the Mac version. It's made me in the past and really makes me want to now switch to DaVinci Resolve because DaVinci Resolve is way less limited on the iPad and way more of like, I think, a pro app. I think Final Cut Pro for iPad is almost like a pro version of CapCut if you're like, which is like, or more like, trying to tailor to people who want apps that help them make videos for things like, a lot of vertical video for social media where, or maybe YouTube Shorts or something like that, where you're, I don't know, it's just maybe a less involved timeline. And like Final Cut for iPad has really been optimized for having big touch targets that you can easily grab and things that maybe don't always make as much sense in sort of like a pro level app where you really want to have all these different controls there. But I think what Apple's done with the multicam stuff that they demoed when the iPad launched looks really cool. I'm glad to see Apple continuing to invest in it. So, we'll see what happens with the iPad. But I just want to mention up front, it's like I've been playing with the new iPad. It is a very amazing piece of hardware. And depending on what you do, I don't think the software lets it down, quote unquote, as much as some people like to say around the internet. We'll see. See what comes of it in my video. Although, here, my lens is, there we go. Now I'm zoomed out a little more. It was a little tight there. I think the other thing too, just kind of behind the scenes, I have a lot of smart home tech like in the review queue right now. So many different products that have either come out and I haven't gotten to them yet or have yet to come out, but I have reviews, I'm working on reviews of it. So it's an exciting time on the channel. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there. I'm going to say hi to some of you guys in the chat, and then I have a couple other topics. So by the way, I moved the time to 3 p.m. I guess did you see that properly, or did I properly move it? Hopefully you guys weren't like waiting here at 2:30. Hey Brian, nice to see you. Hey Saul, some regulars here. When will Apple release a meaningful update to HomeKit? I don't know. That's like, for example, Apple doesn't have anything for Matter 1.3. I would bet we'll see some updates to Apple Home at WWDC around it. Maybe or maybe not mentioned in the actual keynote, but usually there's lots of stuff that even doesn't make the keynote, but that comes out in the coming days from there as people start to play with the operating systems and look at like the API changes and stuff for developers. So, I imagine we'll see some announcements for Apple Home then. But, at the same time, I think, there can be ways to sort of improve Apple Home that aren't reliant on Apple. Like, for example, my video this weekend, I'm going to talk about how I got this robot vacuum working in Apple Home. And that has nothing to do with, it just shows up as a switch in Apple Home, but works for me that way. And then also, through the company's app, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. In some ways, I also like, on the flip side, I've seen a lot of release notes from Apple over the past few releases for iOS 17, especially with the HomePod release notes saying, oh, we've made this more reliable. We're fixing bugs. And that's great. There's something to be said for fixing bugs and make stuff more reliable. So I like that side of what Apple's doing. In some ways, no new features, but making things more reliable is something that I think is good to see. But I certainly agree. I think that the pace of innovation from Apple has never really been super fast with smart home, and that can be a double-edged sword. But I think that it's definitely a time, even at their slow pace, that's due for an update. Yes, really wish Pro companies would work on apps for iPad. Continue to use Lightroom and Capture One because they rely on cloud storage and give us external storage options. That's a good point. I know, Brian, there's a lot of Pro workflows that don't necessarily fit well moving to a cloud-based subscription solution like, Lightroom Cloud. I use Lightroom on the iPad because I pay for the Lightroom Cloud, and my volume of photo processing is, maybe 50 photos for a thumbnail photo shoot or something once or twice a week. That's nothing compared to a pro photographer, and very easy to manage on the cloud. But there are definitely situations where that doesn't make sense. DaVinci Resolve, you can work with files on an external drive on iPad, although I haven't tried it yet myself, but that's what I've heard. Final Cut, Apple announced with the new version coming that you can work with projects on an external drive, which is nice. I agree. I don't know if Adobe's ever going to give us that, but I'd like to see other apps do that. Apple, I want to say it was iOS 15 or 14, gave developers all the APIs. I think they probably need to do anything like that with the file system. So we'll see. Hey, Modern Day Tech, Eric, Modern Day Tech. Great to see you here. Also a great YouTube channel. Check out if you haven't already. And he has a whole Modern Day series of channels too, that depending on your interests, you might find fun. So great stuff to check out. And hey, Garance from Troy, New York. Always nice to see you here. Yes. Oh, cool. Yeah. So you're thinking about an iPad Pro 11-inch too. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say about the 11-inch versus the 13-inch, because I debated about that a lot and initially was going to get an 11-inch. But the 11-inch with the Magic Keyboard in the previous generation is heavier than the at least feels heavier to me. I need to actually do the weight before I say this in a video of checking the weights, but it feels like this new iPad Pro is lighter than an 11-inch iPad Pro. Like this is an 11-inch Pro. This feels heavier to me than this, but I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. What I'm getting at is like with the new 13-inch, it's so much slimmer and lighter that you almost get sort of like the same portability as the 11, but then with a bigger screen. Obviously, it's still going to be a larger footprint in size, in terms of like, this size and this size difference. But so the 11's still a lot smaller, and that either way. So yeah, but just something to consider, and I'll probably be talking about that more in a video once I spend some more time with it. Unfortunately, like I know a lot of full-time YouTubers have been diving into like all the details of this thing for hours and hours a day already and publishing videos. Unfortunately, I'm more, given that I'm not a full-time YouTuber, I've had a lot of things going on at work the past, and family life then beyond that. So my free time has been limited to sort of play with this outside of work and family stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, I got a lot of comments about Apple investing in HomeKit, and always love to see that. Yeah, we've talked a lot about Christian. Good question on the HomeKit scare video. I can understand why you went potentially with Ring, if that sort of fits well with the other devices maybe you have or what you're interested in using. But I don't know. I think for Apple HomeKit Secure Video, we'll see where they decide to take that platform, because I think there's a real potential for Apple to have some more services revenue there. So I could see them wanting to continue to do it for that reason alone. But the challenge is that when you have this kind of shared standard, it's hard to get a lot of integration between the camera and new features the camera can do with the actual standard of HomeKit Secure Video. What I would love to see Apple do is give more flexibility to the camera manufacturers. So things like if the camera can recognize people or recognize other events on the camera with on-device image processing, let the camera do that and then tell HomeKit Secure Video, hey, I see this. And maybe HomeKit still would add the special sauce of recognizing faces in your photo library of who's at the door. So it looks like so-and-so's at the front door. Maybe that stuff is still within HomeKit Secure Video, but that would be something I would love to see as far as a practical improvement, and would allow camera manufacturers to sort of differentiate themselves. So then why would you want to spend extra money on this company's HomeKit Secure Video camera over this company's? Well, we have really good on-device image processing. And so then it's a little bit more of a way companies could find a way to charge a premium, because I think a lot of the HomeKit market has gone to either very niche cameras that are actually for not so niche use cases, like an outdoor camera, like Eve Outdoor Cam and a handful of other outdoor cameras that work with HomeKit. And then also just a whole slew of relatively similar indoor HomeKit Secure Video cameras, a lot of which are great, but none of which are all that remarkable, and are all around the same price point, more or less, depending on maybe a few more features you might get up a little bit higher. So yeah, we'll see. Personally, I don't rely too much on HomeKit Secure Video, other than, as I've said in previous videos, it's nice to sometimes use that as an indoor camera, where then in the Home app, you can easily see a view of the inside of your house. You can get a camera to do that for not as much money relative to other cameras. And then you get the privacy of Apple Home built into that, and the ability to say, disable the camera when somebody's home from your Apple Home. Of course, it'd still film if everybody who's a member of your home is gone. Getting into the weeds here, but yeah, I think it's an area especially ripe for improvement from the Apple side. But I mean, it's also important to think about, if this was, I mean, I love iPad, and maybe I'll talk more about iPad over time on the channel, but there are plenty of iPad creators and channels and stuff where things were looking a little bit bleak for a while until there started to be rumors about this new redesigned iPad Pro and, updates to the iPad. And then of course they come, and it's a big deal and really redefines a lot of that product category. And we've seen some things in the past that Apple's done with the smart home, but they haven't done any big moves like that in a while. I mean, really since the new HomePod was the last one, and then before that, the HomePod Mini, and before that, the concept of HomeKit Secure Video back in WWDC 2019. And there's been maybe a handful of other little things along the way, but those I think probably just the big ones that come to mind. And we're only one of those events away from, or one of those kind of introductions from Apple, not necessarily an Apple event, away from a lot of that area changing. Obviously, those events represent a lot of incremental work behind the scenes by a lot of people. So I'm not saying that it's like just one thing that just happens, but I think you get what I'm saying. Yes, I don't take 2,000 photos during a 4-hour event. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely more than I can handle. But I will say, 10-bit 4K footage, iPad Pro, even the less recent ones handle things like that great. Yeah, a lot of good questions here. I do want to get to a couple different other topics that I just want to mention here. One is, a lot of times as the weather gets warmer here in the Northern Hemisphere, which maybe you live with, if you're like me, you might carry AirPods around all the time. This is not sponsored at all. None of these companies have given me anything, by the way, just up front. But you might carry AirPods in your pocket. And sometimes I find with shorts or khakis or, other kinds of, athletic shorts, whatever, other kinds of stuff you might wear in the warmer months, the pockets on them aren't like jeans pockets that can keep AirPods in there more reliably. And so if you put a little silicone case, this one's from Elago. Yeah, Elago. And there are a handful of companies on Amazon that make these kinds of things. And you can just get a little silicone case for AirPods, and it makes it much more grippy. So then they stay in your pocket. So then they're less likely to fall out, but you still are able to have, at least like I like to have, just have my AirPods in my pocket at any time, so I can just pull them out for whatever reason if I need to. So yeah, just a handy tip if you haven't thought about it. Usually those, last I've seen, are like $10 or so. So not too expensive. Something to think about if you're in the market for that. So another company I've talked a bunch about on this channel that I wanted to talk about too is Sonos. Sonos has been in the news and probably will be in the news some more. We've had some leaks about their new headphones. They're trying to get into headphones. And, then of course, there's also the new Sonos app, which has become pretty controversial. I was actually having some trouble setting this up earlier, but I was trying to get it so that you could see my screen for my Sonos app, but then QuickTime was not picking that up. Maybe we'll still be able to put it on, but I just think something about the direction of the company is kind of definitely stumbled with the launch of this app. They launched it without a lot of features, and they launched it without calling it like a beta of any kind. And that just all seemed really weird to me, that they would do that. And it just, like, I get where they're going, so basically, if you're not familiar, there's a whole concept of like a queue in Sonos, and you can manage your queue, and it's kind of not really there in the new app. And they have some nice ideas with the new app, but it's only on iPhone. So like, at least last I launched, like other versions of the app, you don't get the same look and feel. So you get the old look and feel on the other devices. And I just wish they'd done it in a way where, like, you'll see this sometimes. Google does this a lot, and I think other companies do this too, where there'll be like an option somewhere in the screen where it'd be like, check out our new experience, right? And then you can opt into the new experience and see it. Well, maybe it's not 100% finished, and maybe there are bugs. And then the company can sort of get feedback from you and other users about that. But yeah, it's just it doesn't really make sense to me. So I mean okay, now I guess my iPad had not updated. Now I have the new look and feel on my iPad as well. So that's there, which is good to see that they published it there too. But yeah, I have it working now, so we can hopefully I can share my. Let's see if this will actually work. There we go. Share app. Whoops, that is not what I want to do. I think now you can see it, but it's like really small, and that is not what I want. Here. That is not what I want. This is really embarrassing. Although I don't think you can actually see any of this yet. Give me just a second here, and we should have this running. Okay. Okay. I'm going to give up on this because this is just not show current application. Okay, cool. Here we go. So can you guys see this? Let's see in the chat. It still says on, go back to live mode, publish. There we go. So you guys should be able to see this now. This is from my phone, and like, I like what Sonos is doing here with like the bottom of the screen is something that you can easily get to with your thumb on a phone. And so they're putting the important controls down at the bottom. And so you can lift up and then see your system with different cards. And so I could go into like the office and play something in my office here. It's going to play. But then I can change from here, and then you can get to the queue here. So that works. But, you know, some of this stuff, I think they've been furiously updating or like updating quickly because they've had a lot of community feedback over the past couple of weeks with this new release. Yeah, I like that they're trying to make their app more modern and like all of these cards. I just think that it's a lot of cards, and a lot of like card oriented things that are just always up there. And sometimes maybe that can be a little confusing to have so many cards. like that search animation, like it's very cool to look at, but I just like now I have a card on top of a card from going to search, and then I dismiss it. And it's like, then I don't really have a card from what I used to have. And then I go here and I have a card here, but like the search is still not a card until I like open it. And so it's just like cards on top of cards. Like cards are really cool, and they're, yeah, I don't know if I love sort of that setup. And then you can go here to recently played, and you have this same paradigm where it's like a card on top of a card. So yeah, we'll see what happens over time, but I'm excited to see. So that's the app. But I'm excited to see what Sonos actually does with headphones, because I think a lot of people think that maybe headphones are crazy. I've seen some sensational headlines around the idea of like Sonos losing their way, and they have this terrible, quote unquote, terrible app now. And then now they're rumored to get into headphones, although the company hasn't officially announced anything about that yet. And that somehow like doesn't fit with home audio. Personally, I use headphones a lot at home. And if you have children that make noise, or other people in your home that you want to tune, or pets or whatever that you want to tune out for any period of time, headphones I think are still a very handy thing at home. And I'm sure there'll be some cool ways that Sonos can like integrate headphones into the rest of their system. And so I'm intrigued to see where that goes. And I do think, like for example, on the Apple side, if you have AirPods or any other kind of Apple compatible headphones, could be Beats headphones or whatever, it's pretty straightforward to be, let's say, in the music app or another app and select a different audio source where you're playing in your AirPods, and then you switch and you're playing to your AirPlay 2 speakers in your home. Maybe that's HomePods or Sonos speakers or whatever. And I think there could be some nice things with Sonos headphones where they could tie that in really well. Maybe you're watching your TV, and instead of playing out of the sound bar, it comes to your headphones, or you could have it go there instead, so you can watch the TV at night and not wake anybody up. So we'll see. I think the other side of it is, how are you going to manage and use these headphones outside of your home where you don't have a Sonos system? One of the cool things they added, which I haven't really played with much with the new Sonos setup, is that you can actually like remote access your Sonos system better from like a web app, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we'll see. With I think one of the things I really liked, if you're like watching this channel, you probably are familiar with AirPlay 2 and Apple's multi-room audio systems, and wonder like, well, why bother with Sonos if you already have Apple or other stuff? And I think that with the advantage I see with Sonos generally is that two things. One is, if you don't just have Apple Music, you can integrate more music services with Sonos than just Apple Music. And so there's that. But if, at the same time, if you want to do like multi-room audio, you get a way faster response time and better performance, in my experience, with Sonos compared to Apple AirPlay 2. There's just something about Sonos has figured out. It's more reliable. And then beyond that, Sonos gives you way more options in terms of speakers that might fit certain rooms better. So you have things like a portable Sonos Move that you could take out. Rumors are Sonos is going to have a new version of their, Sonos Roam Bluetooth speaker that you can take even more places because it's even smaller. And then you have everything up to like an Era 300 or a Sonos 5, bigger speakers and for bigger, more high fidelity setups. You have the sound bars for TVs. And, Apple just has the HomePod Mini and the HomePod. And of course, lots of other manufacturers make AirPlay 2 speakers as well. So there's that side of it. But I just think that Sonos can be a nice sort of integrated prepackaged solution where you have a lot of speaker options. And one of the cool features I love about a lot of Sonos speakers is they have an Ethernet jack, so you can wire them, which makes them even more reliable. Now, in recent models, they've moved that Ethernet jack to a USB-C to Ethernet adapter. So, there's that sort of additional cost than you have to add Ethernet, but it's still possible. It's not possible at all on an Apple HomePod. You can, of course, connect the higher end version of the Apple TV, which is what you should get if you're getting a new Apple TV, just because it has Thread and Ethernet and other stuff. If you're into smart home tech, you should get the higher end Apple TV. But with that, it's something that Apple doesn't really provide in the speaker market. So we'll see. I'd love to see Apple sort of compete more with Sonos and bring out more speakers, or more tightly integrate maybe with a third party company, and bring stuff that way. But I think that we'll see. We'll see what comes from Sonos in the next few weeks. I feel like there's a lot of rumors around what they're up to, and I'm kind of intrigued to see where they go. I don't know really if I'm necessarily in the market for anything that they've been talking about, like a new Bluetooth speaker or headphones. So I don't know if you can expect reviews of these things on my channel, but I do think it'll be there are definitely things I want to keep an eye on in the smart home space. And even if you're not really into Sonos and you're more into Apple, I think it's kind of important to, if you're into it enough to watch this live stream, to keep up with what's possible in the industry. So, oh, hey, we got some new folks in the chat. Nikias, nice to see you here. I've loved watching your iPad Pro content earlier this week. I saw you were into the 11-inch this time. I went with the 13-inch, but nice to see you here. Thanks for showing up, Nikias. Great content, by the way, on both Apple and smart home over on his channel. So definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. Never know who's going to stop by. Edgar's Home Tech. Also nice to see you here. See, I got a lot of fun folks in the chat. Let's see. AirPods static issues from Apple TV. Mine works fine for my iPhone and iPad. I have not seen this with my Apple TV. I have seen this with Apple Vision Pro, and I wasn't, I haven't been 100% sure if it's like the AirPods or the Apple Vision Pro or what, but where you put the AirPods Pro, and I have the newer USB-C ones in my ears, and then I have Apple Vision Pro on, and it's like static in the background until I take my AirPods out and put them back in, and then usually it goes away. So I feel like maybe it's a software thing, not a hardware thing. If it's happening like that, maybe it would be more every time. I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, I have seen that with other Apple devices. I don't know if anybody else has seen that kind of issue with AirPods connecting to certain devices and then having static. Apple did have a big recall with AirPods. I think it was like the first version of the Pros, where they had some buzzing and rattling and they had to replace a bunch of units. I was part of that recall and got a new pair of AirPods Pro via that replacement program. That was a number of years ago now. So yeah, we'll see. So what other stuff? Oh, not real time at all, but follow up from a previous live stream. We were talking about garage doors and garage door openers and things like that. So right over here next to me off camera, I have the Tailwind garage door controller. So I will be playing with that and, of course, making a video about that on the channel. So stay tuned for that. Their technology looks really intriguing, and I think they have a lot of cool stuff. So we'll see how it goes with actually setting it up and trying it out. But I'm really excited to play with Tailwind. I think for ways to get your garage door to be smart in Apple CarPlay, Apple Home, any other smart home platform, really cool stuff. They even have a sensor you can put in your car, which I am going to try too, where you can just keep this sensor inside of your car, and then as your car gets close to your garage door, it just opens because it uses Bluetooth with this sensor to sort of detect your car's presence. So we'll see how that works. I have somewhat skeptical on if that's actually going to work well or not. We'll see. But either way, just having the direct control in CarPlay should be pretty cool. Now, let's see, what other projects do I have? Oh, yes. I did want to mention some other things. So I previously reviewed the SmartWings shades, and these are still working well for me. I did have an additional failure, not in my son's room, but in my twin's room. And so those blinds went offline, and then I had to, just do the same thing I did in my son's room, which is you unplug the battery from the shades, and then you just unplug the nearest HomePod Mini or whatever you think would be the thread border router for those shades. Restarted both of those, left my shades unplugged for maybe like a half hour or so just to be safe. Just unplugged it, left, did other things, came back, plugged it in, and then everything reconnected and it was fine. So, just something that happens sometimes with thread devices, but I've used those shades all over the house, the different shades that I have, 2 in the basement and 2 upstairs, a bunch over now. It's been, I don't know, like a couple of months, and to have only 2 times where they went offline, I think is pretty good for smart home tech. So we'll see. I mean, of course, it's not Lutron level reliability where it never goes offline, but it's still pretty good, I think. So just wanted to mention that here since it's after the video published. And let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's see if there's any other questions in the comments. Yeah, CarPlay is going well. I've been using, hey, Curtis, nice to see you here. Yeah, I've been using like it's nice to have the widescreen CarPlay where then you see more of the map. Although I have noticed something that's funny, which is that, hold on one sec. Maybe this is only something that's funny to me as a developer, but it's kind of weird how Google Maps, when you're using it, if you take the widescreen CarPlay, you can make it normal size CarPlay and then have something else from your car sort of beside CarPlay. And then you can then make it more full screen again where it goes widescreen. Google Maps seems to, at least in recent versions, assume that if you're in widescreen CarPlay, you have it in widescreen. So then you'll compress your CarPlay view, and then the Google Maps directions of like where you're supposed to go is like right on the border of the screen, and just it's like underneath the buttons, and something's messed up there. It doesn't like reposition the map when you shrink the CarPlay view. So something's off there. Apple Maps does not have that issue. I go back and forth between which I use depending on the scenario. Apple Maps in this area of the country is usually pretty good, but not always quite the edge that Google Maps has, I've found. They still haven't always beaten them out in every aspect. But so if time's really of essence or I'm going to certain areas in the city, I might switch to Google Maps. But yeah, overall, CarPlay is great. I love having wireless CarPlay where then it just resumes the podcast or music or whatever that I was listening to and just comes right on, because there's a lot of those like quick trips in the car where if you have wired CarPlay, you might not bother to plug it in, and then then you don't have the opportunity to listen to stuff. So it's just a nice convenience more than anything there to have wireless CarPlay. And there are a lot of adapters. I didn't actually buy any, but I was looking, before I changed cars, that, like if you have wired CarPlay, you can get adapters to make your wired CarPlay wireless. And I've heard from friends who use some of those adapters, good success with them. So something else to consider too with CarPlay. All right. So it's been about 40 minutes now. with the live stream. I think we're going to go ahead and end it here. It's been really great to see you guys here another Friday. And next week we have a holiday weekend in the US. I think I am probably going to be taking the week off of live streams. Hopefully have a lot of content in terms of videos coming for you next week. But yeah, I think we'll just take the afternoon, Friday afternoon before Memorial Day weekend here in the US off. So no live stream for me next Friday, but then should be resuming the usual schedule after that. So great to talk, and I look forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks, but also on YouTube. So thanks for joining me. Have a good one.